Everyone, I'm Dr. Christine Sequenzia. I serve as Senior International Policy Analyst at Bread for the World, and our new Bread GR team is fully in the room, so if you guys can wave. We have Bob Powers over here, we have Cheyenne Range in the back, Charles is taking a video, Andre's running slides, and here I am to welcome you. So thank you so much. I see so many great friends, Hill staffers, so thank you for accepting our invitation. Today, you guys, my job is easy. I come to be the voice for some of those folks around the world, the international humanitarian aid that the International Humanitarian Aid serves. You've had the opportunity to hear from the Mother of Israel and several others here today who live domestically, but sometimes those folks that live abroad, they don't have the ability to be here in person to represent their stories to you today. I visited 15 countries in 5 years as a part of a humanitarian aid organization. And I wanted to bring you into the year 2013, where I landed in a small village in Nicaragua and met a little girl whose name was Yossi. And she had to sell her body at the young age of 9 years old for sex because she wasn't able to eat enough. Her mom wasn't able to provide food for her family. Fast forward 2 years and several trips later, I landed in Jordan in a small village called Fuhais, where I met a little boy, 14 years old, not very little. His name was Yusuf. He was from Yemen, but he had landed in Jordan in a tiny village called Fuhais, like I mentioned, living outside the UN camps. He was living outside the UN camps because his family belonged to a Muslim sect that wasn't welcome in the camps due to infighting. 60 million refugees in 2015 lived outside the UN camps. He was forced to act as father and provider for his 5 brothers and sisters as a refugee. And the church in that tiny Muslim majority country tried to serve and meet his needs to the best of the ability, but he got in trouble because of crime, trying to provide food for his brothers and his sisters and his mom. And that's where I met him. So Bread for the World is a faith-based organization, and this isn't a faith-based event, but my faith drives many of my decisions, as do many of you staffers while you're here today, and the members that you represent. So I'm here to call you to the best of yourself, back to Scripture. And so many of you will remember a story where Christ was preaching to many people, sort of like this room, and he preached so long that they were now hungry. And so while Christ, he cares for our spiritual needs, but he also cares for our needs, that our physical needs. And so he asked the disciples to then go out and find 2 loaves and a few fish to feed the people. So I'll remind you in that story that while the disciples went out and got the food and brought it back to Christ for him to bless it, it was the disciples that went out and got the food and then delivered it. So I'm going to ask you today, staffers who are in the room, members if you're present, to remind yourselves that it is your job, it is your calling in your position here in Congress, on Capitol Hill, to properly distribute those resources that you have been given to distribute and to allocate. So with all of that, maybe there's a slide behind me to represent that team that I mentioned, and we had the ability to join Dr. Angelique Walker-Smith, who teaches me all things, in the Pan-African group of ladies that she was leading in a meeting with Senator Braun. You probably see that behind me. And so I'll ask you just a couple of things on this Pass the Farm Bill Now event. Number one is the Food for Education program, or the Food for Peace program. So 86% of the $1.75 billion that's allocated towards this program goes to meet emergent needs. That's the story of Yusuf that I mentioned. So crisis in Yemen, famine's happening, it's been going on for so long and even now. So within that, the program of Food for Peace, 86% goes to meet emergencies. Non-emergency needs is that 14%. This is the critical part that we need to be reallocated. So 14% of that goes to meet non-emergent needs. We're asking for just 3 tiny tweaks in that program. Number one, we'd like to keep commodities as an option. We love commodities, as represented by several of the speakers here today, that meet those 86% of emergent needs. But we'd really like to see those agriculture techniques and development and skills to be grown within the community so that those who are not experiencing imminent crisis can then sustain themselves and graduate off of humanitarian aid. So we'd like to see commodities as an option and keep it at the 30% floor. And then the third ask is to be able to do more local and regional procurement as a part of the McGovern or as a part of the Food for Peace program. The second and very quick ask is the McGovern-Dole Food for Education program. This is a school lunch program that has seen phenomenal success over the course of its span of time that Eugene mentioned, served 31 million people in 48 countries. So over the course of the 5-year Farm Bill reauthorization, a country called Timor-Leste saw reading fluency rates increase by 48%, just because of lunches being provided at school. So then you're able to see girls who might not be in school, boys who might not be in school, go to school just to receive those lunches. That program, little known fact, also serves kids under 5 who are not yet in school, so very, very important. Like to increase the local and regional procurement in that program to a range of 10 to 20%. That way, countries who are right at the end of being able to graduate off of aid might be able to experience more economic growth from within the country. That's my ask for you today, calling you back to the best of yourselves, allocating those resources for people in need who might not be here to represent themselves. Thank you.